In the vast forest of world literature, there are many classic works, but few books have had such a profound impact on the historical course of an era. Among them, the novel Uncle Tom's Cabin by the American writer Harriet Beecher Stowe stands out as the most influential work of the 19th century. It was the best-selling book of its time, translated into dozens of languages, and sparked a powerful wave of abolitionism across the United States. When I first read this book, I witnessed the stormy and tragic life of Uncle Tom. I felt deep sorrow for the oppressed fate of black people in the American South. I also clearly heard the voice that exposed the dark crimes of the slave system. However, when I read it for the second time, I discovered another layer of meaning, a profound philosophy of life hidden beneath the political surface of the novel. That is why, in today's video, the page would like to share with you this deep philosophical content through the classic novel Uncle Tom's Cabin. I hope it will leave you with many thoughts and valuable lessons about the wisdom of survival in life, helping you live with true courage, resilience, and happiness in the best possible state. Now, please listen to the content we are sharing today. Superiority is like underwear. It cannot be shown off outwardly. A truly strong person will never act superior to others. A noble life does not need to be decorated with a sense of superiority. In life, there are people who rely on a feeling of superiority to build an invisible hierarchy. They believe that by doing so, they become more refined, more talented, or occupy a higher position than others. On the contrary, there are also people who earn genuine respect from everyone around them through humility and an equal heart. Reading this novel, you will realize that all feelings of superiority do not come from appearance, knowledge, family background, wealth, status, achievements, or power. They only arise from ignorance and a heart that feels lacking. The story begins in the 19th century, before the American Civil War. The southern United States was mainly ruled by white people, while black people became a source of cheap labor, working primarily on cotton plantations. The main character is Uncle Tom, a black man who had to survive in that harsh and dark environment. He went through many ups and downs. At a slave auction, Uncle Tom was sold to a plantation owner named Simon Legree, a man who was extremely brutal. Like most owners of black slaves or those who profited from the slave trade, Simon viewed human beings as nothing more than material objects, tools to generate profit. One day during the cotton harvest, because he suspected the black slaves of being lazy, Simon appointed Sambo and Quimbo, also black men, as overseers to supervise the remaining slaves. He thought that because they shared the same race and skin color, they would understand each other's circumstances. However, once given a little power, Sambo and Quimbo developed a strong sense of superiority. They exploited their privileges to flaunt their superiority by whipping anyone who did not pick enough cotton. If anyone displeased them, they immediately tortured that person. Upon seeing a beautiful new black girl arrive, they forced her to become theirs, regardless of destroying her marriage and family happiness. Sambo and Quimbo became so arrogant that they acted as if they were the real rulers of the plantation. They ruthlessly oppressed all the other black people. A French writer, diplomat, and politician once said that a person can never demonstrate his superiority by looking at others with eyes full of hatred and contempt. In fact, as psychologist Alfred Adler pointed out in his classic book What Life Should Mean to You, the feeling of superiority affects a person's entire life happiness. In this book, he explains that the sense of superiority is the desire for an ideal version of oneself, the emotion one experiences after achieving that ideal self. Moreover, the feeling of superiority only emerges after a person has gone through feelings of inferiority and then strives with all their might to become superior to others. This process is merely to affirm one's own existence in the world. In other words, the feeling of superiority originates from deficiency and inferiority. Everyone experiences it. Sambo and Quimbo, rising from slaves to overseers, developed a sense of superiority. The two students who rank first in class will develop it. The employee named Employee of the Year will develop it. Someone who has a beautiful lover will feel superior. Even in everyday life, it is not unfamiliar. City people often feel superior to those from the countryside. Highly educated people often feel superior to those with lower education. People who earn a lot of money often feel superior to those with lower income. Beautiful people often feel superior to those with average appearance. In reality, having a feeling of superiority is understandable because humans are born with a physical body and live in a society that values material things. But what is concerning is that many people express their superiority by trying at all costs to prove it to others. Only when many people see it can they experience their own value. In relationships, proving superiority can mean showing off and constantly comparing with those around them, comparing houses, cars, wives, husbands, or children's academic achievements. In social interactions, it can mean looking down on others. At work, it can be bullying newcomers or lecturing others. At school, it can be school violence, isolating friends, or competing fiercely for grades. There are also ways to show superiority by invoking morality or humanity, such as emotionally blackmailing friends. We've been friends for so many years, and you're so rich. Can't you lend me some money? Some people even have an innate overconfidence. They are clearly very ordinary, yet they look down on others with half-closed eyes. The truth is that the feeling of superiority is like underwear. The more you show it off, the more disgusted others feel. We need to understand that the more one lacks something, the more one wants to show it off. The more deficient one feels, the more one needs recognition. The more insecure one is, the more one needs to prove their value. In psychology, there is an effect called the Dunning-Kruger effect, the illusion of one's own competence. People tend to overestimate their own abilities compared to reality. This also applied to Sambo and Quimbo. In the eyes of the plantation owner, they were no different from two dogs, mere tools to be used. Once a better choice appeared for the overseer position, these two would surely be discarded at any time. Ultimately, all feelings of superiority are just a shallow psychology. Only people with a vain and superficial inner world believe that having traveled to many places, eaten at many luxury restaurants, known powerful people, obtained high degrees, or acquired wealth automatically places them higher than others. There is a very accurate saying from a work by Osho: the feeling of superiority is nothing but inferiority stepping on someone else's head. The more one wants to prove oneself, the narrower the path of life becomes. The second owner of Uncle Tom was Augustine. Unlike most cruel plantation owners, Augustine did not discriminate against black people. However, his wife Mary was the complete opposite. Mary came from a wealthy family. She had a happy marriage and many servants. She should have been the most comfortable person in the estate. Yet she always sighed and complained that no one around her truly cared about her. All of this stemmed from her habit of valuing her own superiority. She constantly put others down to elevate herself. On one hand, she enjoyed the luxuries brought by the unjust slave system. On the other hand, she proclaimed herself the savior of black people, claiming that without her strict management, the slaves would only face death. After marriage, in order to receive the best service, Mary used every trick to break up the families of her black servants and force them to follow her. Her favorite hobby was making the female servants stay up all night, then complaining about headaches and demanding everyone's attention. One day, because a female servant accidentally fell asleep and failed to notice Mary's headache in time, Mary flew into a rage. She accused the servant of being selfish and claimed it was because she herself had been too lenient with black people. When Augustine advised his wife to put herself in the servant's position and stop separating their families, Mary sneered contemptuously and said, "A black person cannot have rich emotions like us." However, in the eyes of others, the one who was truly selfish, heartless, hypocritical, and incapable of caring about anyone but herself was Mary. Over time, her husband saw through her character and no longer seriously listened to her complaints. The servants, already too familiar with her unreasonable demands, began to serve her only half-heartedly. In this way, Mary became trapped in her own sense of superiority and gradually lived like an isolated island in real life. In our society, we also encounter many people like the character Mary. Some who have lived abroad for a few years return home and suddenly speak with an affected accent, mixing English words into every Vietnamese sentence. On social media, many people live in a virtual world, constantly showing off everything they have. You will notice that conversations with people who have a strong superiority complex always contain a lot of I and very little you. They constantly try to steer the center of the conversation back to themselves. People who like to display their superiority show a very clear pattern in social or intimate relationships. They deny everything about the other person, focus on others' flaws, frequently criticize and humiliate others, and skillfully seize every opportunity to showcase their own strengths. In particular, they try at all costs to hide their own weaknesses. Because they cannot see or pretend not to see their own shortcomings, they cannot make real progress in life. People with a strong sense of superiority often lack empathy and cannot put themselves in others' shoes. In reality, superiority never brings them true satisfaction because they are not pursuing genuine excellence. They only want to prove they are better than others. Therefore, their instinct is to praise themselves and believe no one else can match them. Arrogance and pride thus become their habits. However, they do not realize that when they gild themselves, it only dazzles others' eyes without bringing any warmth. Only by restraining the psychology of superiority and looking at people and life with an equal heart can one earn genuine respect and sincere treatment from those around them. Only then will the path of life truly open wide and one's life become fulfilling. The highest form of character for a person is to look down without arrogance and look up without shame. According to Mary's viewpoint, only violence could tame all the black people on the plantation. While visiting his brother's estate, Augustine saw his brother hunting down a black man who had escaped. This slave, who had a fierce thirst for freedom, was named Cassie. He was tall and extremely strong. Alone, he had defeated the overseers who tried to subdue him with force and then fled. Augustine's brother was furious and sent men with hunting dogs to capture Cassie. But Cassie fought back fiercely. No one could get close to him until he was shot and wounded. To prevent the others from killing the innocent Cassie, Augustine stepped forward to protect him and took Cassie as his own slave. Augustine bought Cassie from his brother, brought him back, prepared a comfortable bed, bandaged his wounds, and personally cared for him. When Cassie had fully recovered, Augustine wrote a certificate of freedom, allowing Cassie to go wherever he wanted. Surprisingly, Cassie, who had tried to escape many times before, tore the certificate in half and said he did not want to leave Augustine. Even later, when Augustine became seriously ill with an infectious disease, Cassie showed no fear and insisted on staying by his side to care for him until his last breath. In reality, Augustine did not have higher status, power, or wealth than his brother. Yet he inspired such sincere loyalty from Cassie. This was because Augustine had abandoned any sense of superiority and treated those beneath him with an equal heart. If in a relationship you wonder whether you should continue deepening it with someone, observe how that person treats those who are weaker or in a more difficult position than themselves. Because worshipping the strong is human nature, but caring for and treating the weak with equality is something not everyone can do. When a person has traveled 1,000 miles and read 1,000 books, when a person possesses an equal and unified heart toward the world around them, that person will realize their own smallness. They will clearly understand that all achievements and glories are only temporary. Only by lowering the desire to prove oneself can one accumulate true inner strength. As someone once said, when you look down on someone, you have come very close to failure. When you respect someone, you are not far from success. The highest achievement and greatest character of a person come when they stand in a higher position than others yet still maintain humility and control their sense of superiority. In the novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, it is not only a story against the slave system but also a philosophy of survival that reveals the true nature of human beings. When facing his wife's criticism of the slaves, Augustine said, "If we were in their position, perhaps we would not do as well as they do." Indeed, you may discover that many times when you unconsciously show a sense of superiority, it is actually because you are not confident enough and want to protect yourself. Therefore, every time you step out, you put on an invisible armor. That armor may be academic degrees, titles, family background, or money. The feeling of superiority becomes an invisible shield for you. It may also be that you unconsciously display superiority because you want others to recognize, admire, or praise you. That is why you adorn yourself with all kinds of jewelry. Those ornaments may be material possessions, fame, achievements, or favorable conditions. But the more you decorate yourself until you sparkle, the more you dazzle others' eyes without being able to see your true self clearly. Over time, even you no longer know who your real self is. A person who cannot be sincere with themselves cannot demand sincerity from others. Therefore, whenever you feel the sense of superiority rising, you can ask yourself, what has triggered this feeling of superiority in me right now? Check whether you are seeking praise or recognition from others. Observe whether you often criticize, look down on others, and only see their flaws. Ask yourself if you are demanding that others completely obey you. And do not think that the story condemning an unjust society toward black people in this book is something grand and unrelated to you. From Uncle Tom's Cabin to To Kill a Mockingbird, that injustice all stems from the sense of superiority of white people. And even today, discrimination based on skin color, race, wealth and poverty, beauty and ugliness, fat and thin, or physical ability still continues in our real lives. This happens because every one of us harbors some degree of superiority complex. Once you treat others with an equal heart, looking down without arrogance and looking up without inferiority, without showing off in front of others, then you will see that all people are essentially the same. All things become one with yourself. Within you, the feeling of superiority will no longer arise. You will no longer crave to stand at the top of the mountain, nor will you look down on those at the bottom. No matter what circumstances you are in, you will not be trapped in an unstable state, wandering between the two extremes of inferiority complex and superiority complex. This is the best state for a truly excellent and courageous person. In addition, you also need to know that only when you are balanced can the world become fair. As the American psychologist Daniel Goleman wrote in his book Emotional Intelligence, the degree to which you make others feel comfortable will determine the height you can reach. And the final message I want to convey to all of you in today's video is this: may we all be able to let go of the feeling of superiority, take off the invisible cloak and the superficial jewelry made of superiority, maintain an equal heart, and treat others with the same sincerity with which we treat ourselves. Thank you for listening. If you find this video helpful, please share it with those who need it. Give it a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to receive the latest videos every week. Once again, thank you and see you in the next videos.